being tortured, who was well known to his family. He began to question what he was doing.
My cousin told me about Lilian and said she was a good person with her own family.
Sentí que él tenía una actitud como diferente conmigo.
I thought he was different to the others. He was more friendly, and he wasn't after anything.
Pero que tampoco estaba buscando nada.
Personalmente me cambió en el sentido de que...
Personally, it changed me. Because I realized that I had to think for myself. I could no longer accept everything I was told by my superior.
Aceptar todo lo que me decían mis oficiales.
At great personal risk, Hugo contacted Lilian's mother and told her where her daughter was. The information secured Lilian's release. Hugo exposed the torture to the media and fled the country in fear of his life.
Lo asume, lo dice, lo dijo en su momento, y también debe haber tenido sus costos.
He risked a lot to do that, because he's had to leave his country and become an exile.
Un exilio. Tampoco debe haber sido muy fácil para él y para su vida. Entonces, bueno, en ese...
And I'm sure that hasn't been easy. So in that sense, I respect him.
Respetable.
It's 26 years since Hugo Garcia tortured anyone. Though in exile, he still works in a garage. But he lives with the stigma of his past.
Esto me ha marcado. Hay gente que dice, se refiere a mí como el torturador. Si lo hubiera hecho, ¿no es?
It would have been easier if I had killed them rather than tortured them. It's left me scarred. Even today, there are people who still call me the torturer.
In Argentina, the scars of torture are still raw. 22 years after the end of the military dictatorship, the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo parade the images of their lost loved ones. An estimated 30,000 individuals were tortured and killed or disappeared during that time.
La música dibuja prácticamente todo lo que...
Music draws anything an artist could paint.
One of the most notorious figures in Argentina today is former police officer Julio Simón. He's now in prison, awaiting trial on torture and kidnap charges.
Y las óperas prefiero los finales felices.
I like operas with a happy ending. The same with movies. I like happy endings and for good to triumph over evil. My life could be an opera, although it has a bad ending. They could write an opera of the story of my life.
Here he is 5 years ago, being recognized and assaulted in a Buenos Aires coffee shop.
Y los integrantes de Libertad por presos políticos de la Tablada están rompiendo en este momento.
Que salió a la luz porque quizás por ser uno de los asesinos más violentos.
He came into the spotlight because he was one of the most violent killers there.
Y que aparte
he was known as the Butcher. He was half crazy, mad. Even his colleagues thought that.
Con respecto a los mismos compañeros, ¿no?
My training was done on the streets because that's where the information was. My weapons were my ears, my eyes, and my mouth.
Los oídos, los ojos y la boca.
Ana Maria Cariaga has good cause to remember Julio Simón. In 1977, she was a 16-year-old student in Buenos Aires, 3 months pregnant. Her politics made her a target for the military regime.
Yo estaba como yendo a ver una vidriera y vienen dos tipos directo a...
I was walking towards a shop window when I saw 2 men running towards me, so I stopped to let them pass.
Y me agarraron
But they grabbed me and dragged me into a car.
Y me arrastraron hasta un auto. Y era como
It was like pressing the pause button and the scene stops.
Toda la imagen salvo la persona que estaba siendo
The only thing
secuestrada.
moving was me. People were just standing there doing nothing.
Así, nadie hacía nada.
She was driven to one of the many buildings in Buenos Aires, taken over by the regime for interrogations.
La señora le digo, sáquese la venda.
I said to her, take the blindfold off. I don't talk to people wearing
No
blindfolds.
hablo con gente vendada.
Creo que él le sacaba la venda a la
He
gente
took our
y
blindfolds
se hacía
off
ver
and wanted us to see what he looked
esta
like.
otra
It was a power
característica de él,
trip.
de su
He was saying,
personalidad,
look how
era
powerful I am.
esta cosa de
Even though you
poder.
could identify
Soy
me,
tan
it makes no
omnipotente,
difference. Nothing will
aunque
happen
vos
to
me
me.
mires, a mí nunca me va a pasar nada.
Solamente proceder a una tortura que podrían enseñar, no sé, en la Escuela de las Américas.
Instead of doing the things they learnt at the School of the Americas, he seemed to refine things.
Y parece que aplicaba
He would do other kinds of torture, which even his colleagues found repulsive.
que hasta a los compañeros le causaba repulsa, ¿no?
Y él
He got me out of my cell, and I was obviously pregnant then. He tortured me with the electric picano without tying me up.
con picana sin atarme. La picana eléctrica dicen que es
The
un
picana is an
invento
Argentinian
argentino,
invention.
usado con ganado para
It's used to
marcarlo,
brand cattle and looks like a pencil with an electric wire coming out of the back.
unida a un cable por la que pasa electricidad.
Digamos, la información.
Sometimes information was unfortunately more important than ethics.
Desgraciadamente, éticas en algún momento.
Ellos decían, nosotros somos nazis.
They said things like, we're Nazis. And when they tortured you, they were listening to Hitler's speeches and would say stuff like, oh, how good this one is.
Y decía, ah, qué bueno. Y los policías jugando al truco.
The policemen were playing cards and laughing, or maybe playing ping pong.
Pero la tortura física.
I was very worried that the physical
tenía mucho
torture
miedo
might
que
have hurt
le
my
hiciera
baby.
daño al bebé.
Yo estaba un día y medio con vos.
I would be there with them for at least 1.5 days, 2 days, 3 days.
No iba a dormir.
I didn't go to sleep, and at some point, while they were dreaming, they would give me the information I
Yo
wanted.
quería tener.
Cuando venía el represor que había estado a cargo de mi interrogatorio,
Every time when another guard who had tortured me was on duty, he kicked me and shouted, "You fucking bitch, why didn't you tell me you were pregnant? Do you want me to open your legs and make you abort?"
Para mí fue un privilegio.
For me, it was a privilege to be pregnant, because it meant I wasn't alone.
Que no estaba sola.
I don't know how I would have felt without her with
No
me.
hubiera tenido, ¿no? Pero digo, esta es mi experiencia.
Yo entraba.
This is how I got sucked into this vortex. I got more involved every time. This is why they call me the torturer, killer, and all those other names.
De todo.
Ana Maria was released after 4 months and fled Argentina. When her baby was born, she telephoned her mother back home to tell her the good news, but she was never to see her again.
11 de diciembre, cuando llamamos para decir que
On the
había
11th
nacido
of December,
Anita,
I called to say Anita had been born. I was told my mother had been kidnapped 3 days
Yo siempre
earlier.
digo que por 3 días no pude juntar dos cosas.
I will always remember that I missed uniting the two most beautiful things in my life by just 3 days, and my mother never knew that Anita had been born and was okay.
Eso fue muy triste para mí. Y bueno, y después nació bien.
That was very sad.
Creció bien.
But she's almost 27 now, and she recently had a baby, so I'm a grandmother.
Tuvo hace poco un bebé, así que soy abuela. Y bueno, eso.
Ana Maria and Anita returned to Argentina after the military regime fell in 1983. Ana now works on an archaeological dig, excavating the building where she was tortured by Julio Simón. The site will be made into a museum, a reminder that in the long term, torture rarely sustains a regime.
Sí, yo me siento muy buen argentino. Digamos, yo.
I feel that I'm a very good Argentinian. Let's see, here in my cell, I don't have any pictures of naked girls or anything like that. I have 2 Argentinian flags on the walls. But I am here, and I will die with a clear conscience.
Okay, this is it, right down here. Yeah, it's right down the hallway here. Yeah. This is where it all happened in the summer of 1971.
An experiment in California threw new light on how people become torturers. It uncannily prefigured the experience of Abu Ghraib prison guards in Iraq. The experiment demonstrated just how a person's behavior alters when placed in a position of power over others.
I was going to be the meanest and nastiest prison guard that this place had ever seen. I can be a nice guy, or I can be one mean sumbitch. It's all up to you, man.
I wanted to test the idea of what happens when you put good people in a bad place.
In the basement of Stanford University's psychology department, Philip Zimbardo had set up a mock prison and recruited 18 young men to serve as prisoners and guards. The guards' job was to maintain order without using physical violence.
When the guards put on the uniform, they were transformed. One of the guards said, you put on the uniform, you put on the sunglasses, you take the billy club, and you become a guard. One of the guards, the prisoners nicknamed him John Wayne because he was like a Wild West cowboy. And he was the most creatively evil.
But I would practice slamming that nightstick into the palm of my hand to make it, a loud slap like that, and to talk with authority. And I came up to the window where one of the prisoners was looking at me through the bars, and I made some comment which I remember as being, "I'm gonna hit you so hard it'll kill your whole family."
The first day passed uneventfully, but on day 2, the behavior of the guards was causing serious concern.
I think that boredom is a very powerful motivation for evil behavior. You have a long shift and nothing is happening. And all you have are prisoners as your playthings. So we began to see the guards entertaining themselves by coming up with creative things for the prisoners to do.
You stand here. You come over there.
I had one of them pretend he was Frankenstein. Why? I don't know. Just because we could. And I had him walk up and look right into the face of the other prisoner and say, "I love you, number 23587.
I love you, Jordan. I love you, Jordan. You smile, Jordan. You get down here and do 10 push-ups. 2, 3.
I found it entertaining. I found it interesting. I wanted to see how far I could take it.
What if I told you to get down on that floor and fuck the floor? What would you do then?
The other guards, knowing that I had taken a leadership role, felt that they could follow without considering how their own actions would be judged. And perhaps because the warden, who in this case was Professor Zimbardo, never stopped us or even reprimanded us for what we were doing, we were in fact being given tacit approval for what we were doing. So if we had the approval, so to speak, of the authorities, well, they're really responsible, not us, right?
The guards' punishments became increasingly severe. Inmates were made to undress. They were chained together, put in solitary confinement, and subjected to perverse games.
The worst was having prisoners bend over and say, "You're female camels," and the other prisoners lined up. "You're male camels. Go behind them. Okay, now hump them."
Some of the stuff was definitely sexual in nature, and that was not by accident. Because what we were talking about trying to do is to humiliate the prisoners.
Prisoner 819 did a bad thing. Prisoner 819 did a bad thing. Prisoner 819 did a bad thing.
As the experiment went on, as the abuses started to escalate, We thought that they should have become reflective, feeling a little remorse, maybe a little guilt, and then that would temper the next day. It was not at all.